Welcome back to the Benedict Challenge. Today, we continue the discussion of James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and begin to look at how this might apply to the spiritual component of fasting. When we talk about goals and systems, in the background, there's always kind of this assumption about getting ahead according to worldly criteria. And I think for me, that's a lot of what's driven me to always want more, whether it's more food, more caffeine, and a lot of these addictive cycles and habits that I find myself falling into are driven by that same desire just for more. And desire is not a bad thing. Wanting more is not even a bad thing. What happens when we shift our focus from a desire for more material things to more of the spiritual life, to be filled with the Holy Spirit and to ask for it, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that our desires are fundamentally good. So, along with this framework of atomic habits, we never want to think about desire as being an evil thing in and of itself. It's merely warped or disproportionate to the quality of the thing itself. Food is a good thing. However, when we make food into an idol, that's when it can become a problem. The same thing goes for me, it's caffeine and coffee. I'm always looking to get that extra little mental edge, and rather than wait for the clarity that comes from fasting, instead I want to get it through the shortcut. So what I've structured for myself is a way to reframe my desire such that I can actually change a part of who I am. And James Clear talks about multiple levels of our desires. First of all, there's the desire at the level of outcomes. And outcomes can be basically considered our goals. These are specific things that give us a fleeting sense of happiness, but not a real long-term purpose. Next, below that, are processes. Processes, systems, these are things that help us to achieve our goals, but they're a little bit more sustainable, or they last longer in the sense that they become part of our daily routine. Now, even beneath our processes is something even deeper, which is our identity. And our habits want to flow from an identity. And in the long run, we won't do anything that's incompatible with how we view ourselves. So the easiest way to change what you do is actually to change how you think of yourself. So part of this exercise is to ask yourself the question of, who am I? And the only person that can really answer this question is God. But we can begin to understand better who we are by connecting to God through the conscious contact of prayer. So this is where it really becomes important to spend dedicated time in prayer with God or with your higher power to get a sense of who you are. And once you have that sense, it will be much easier to align your systems and ultimately your goals in line with your identity. But I want to suggest that even beneath all three of these things is another layer, and this is ritual. Our rituals speak to our values. They're based on our values, but they also inform our values. So I place them even beneath our identity, because before we have an identity, we have community, we have our context, we have our environment, and our environment really shapes who we are. There's a quote that goes, first we shape our environment, then our environment shapes us. So getting back to this idea of eliminating frictions and making our environment such that it will facilitate the kind of identity that can give us the systems that can help us reach our goals is what the next couple of days are going to be all about. In my case, I have a morning ritual that involves some quiet time, some prayer. Sometimes I'll incorporate a little bit of stretching. And this is a time when I might be tempted to go straight for the hard stuff, the dark coffee. Instead of going straight for that coffee, I've taken to making a little bit more of a ritual out of my tea drinking experience, trying to make it more attractive so that the reward that I get is, if not equal to the reward of coffee, it at least comes close. So remember, we have the cue, followed by the craving, followed by the response, and then we get the reward. If we change our environment, we change our cue. The craving, that's the desire that leads to the habit, which is our response. So if I'm trying to form a sustainable tea drinking habit instead of coffee, what I might do is build a ritual around that will give me not just the reward of some caffeine, because I'm trying to ease off of caffeine to some extent, but I'm trying to develop a ritual that gives me a sense of an identity and reminds me of my values. So in this case, I like to use my filtered water pitcher, clearly filtered, as a sense of the clean living and healthy living. And I heat up my water and then pour it into my favorite mug, which I got at the shrine of St. Therese of Lisieux in Alaska. It's the national shrine to St. Therese. And on the back of that mug, there is a short prayer, a morning offering that comes from St. Therese of Lisieux. And then I might go out to my back porch where I come into contact with nature, another part of my identity. And then I might do some movement, some nutritious movement. This too is a part of my values and my identity. I'll say the prayer while drinking my tea. And at no point am I disconnecting from my body. I'm not getting into that mental mode of the monkey brain that's just trying to get things done and go, go, go. And in the end, this gives me what I call the even keel. And this comes from my inspiration for physical fitness and movement practice, Georges Hebert, who was the forerunner of MoveNat. I'm wearing the shirt right now. And Hebert was a naval officer who recommended certain kinds of exercise as a way to get in shape that were rooted in natural, or what we would today call kind of primal movement. He observed people living on these remote island civilizations, and they didn't do anything like exercise, but just by virtue of going about their work, they were naturally fit. So all these things come back to a sense of identity. Hebert was also known for recommending against the use of caffeine and other stimulants to give his soldiers this even keel. It's a nice sailing term there. But when I remind myself about all of these things, it becomes much easier to resist that craving for a hit of a sudden mega dose of caffeine in the form of coffee. Instead, I'm more likely to scale it down to just tea. So this is just an example of how I'm thinking about atomic habits. I'd like to hear more about what your thought process is if you're doing the course. Send me an email or drop a line. Tell me how you're using ritual to inform your identity and shape your identity, which in turn can shape your processes and in turn shape your outcomes. Pray for me. I'll pray for you.